Hello, fellow investors, and welcome to another episode of Ritter on Real Estate. We teach you how to passively invest like a pro. Today's guest is someone who's become one of the most influential voices in our industry. Veena Jetti is the founder of Vive Funds. Veena's closed over $1 billion in real estate transactions. She's raised hundreds of millions of dollars in investor capital, and she's established herself as a true thought leader in multifamily and private real estate investing. Veena is known for her discipline, her investor-first approach, and her ability to simplify what most operators overcomplicate. So if you're looking to sharpen your investor strategy, whether you're a new LP or a seasoned pro, this conversation is going to be a masterclass for you. So Veena, thanks so much for coming on the show. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you too. I know it's been way too long.
Too long.
We haven't had a chance to catch up, so I'm excited to hear what's going on today.
Same.
So let's give folks a little bit of a background on just who you are, how you've come to be, where you are today in the great position you are. And then I want to dig into some of these topics you have.
Yeah. So I guess that my career started kind of similar to most people. I started in single family. I watched an HGTV show and was like, oh, okay, this is easy. I'm just going to make $100,000 flipping this house that I'm going to buy for $50,000, and then someone's going to pay me $150,000 for it, and it'll be great. And then it's like, wait, it doesn't actually work that way when you get into it. And so I started buying single family, quickly realized how much I hate it because it's so much work. And you're buying these houses to hope to cash flow like a couple $100s a month. And there's not really a lot of scale in it. And it was keeping me super busy. So there was a week that I had put 5 houses under contract in the same week. And I was like, all right, this is how you get to scale. And then I was like, wait, how am I going to find 5 houses a week that are worth putting under contract, let alone being awarded those 5 houses? So then I was like doing the math in my head, and I'm like, even if I do this every week for an entire year, I can't own more than like 500 houses at a time. There's no scale in that. And so I started shifting my focus at that point to multifamily, where, a friend brought me a property. Actually, Joe Fairless was one of the first people I ever partnered with on a deal. And he's a mutual friend of both yours and mine. He's a great guy. And he brought me this deal that was in Dallas, and it was 200 units. This was years ago, maybe like a decade plus ago now. And said, hey, do you want to buy this multifamily with me? And I said, yeah, what could go wrong? Famous last words in anything you do, right? And so we bought that property, and it ended up being like a huge success. We ended up selling it just 3 years and 3 months later. Month 15, we gave investors back 40% of their principal. It was like eating the forbidden fruit of multifamily. And once you do that, it's like you can't unsee it. Mm-hmm. So that was the very first deal. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then, you start increasing your deal size, or maybe the type of deal that you go after and the structure of the deal. And you start getting better as you go along. And so it changes a little bit. And so now we've done a little over $1 billion in transactions and raised a whole bunch of money and been through, all the different parts of the cycle now. Yeah.
What an awesome journey. I know as you've obviously had a ton of success, I know something you're passionate about is, educating women or bringing women into real estate and finance in general, right? And really, kind of just carrying that banner and helping really spread the word and helping women get into the business. And kind of along those lines, you shared something with me that I didn't understand, right? We've obviously heard about this great transfer of wealth that's happening as baby boomers, pass away, and they pass wealth on to their children, right? And there's something $124 trillion worth of wealth transfer that's planned to happen over the next, 15 or 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
Yeah. And, but the thing that I had heard all of that, the thing I didn't know about that you told me about was that it's expected that 100 trillion of that 124 is going to women.
Yeah.
And so you think about, or is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So I'm like, yes, let's
Yeah.
more.
But it's like that's a massive, I mean, if you just think about like the dichotomy of, who has controlled wealth and kind of the family structure, right? The man of the household, and this idea, it seems like that's really fading out and not going to be the case anymore. And so I think it's just super interesting to talk about on with your passion for women owning their own finances. Like, how does this really start to change things, globally or in our world in real estate and all the above?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is that we're talking about it, right? And yes, I speak to women. I also speak to a lot of men about this because, to your point, a lot of men don't know about it or don't hear about it because it's something that's not a widely spread talking point, right? But when we're talking about $100 trillion, this is more money than women have ever controlled in the history of time. And so what we're about to see is a change in the way that organizational structures fundamentally operate, a change in the way that we look at deals, that we present deals. And I say this to the men I speak to. If you do not have a woman on your team in decision-making capacities, so I'm talking like director level, C-suite, board of directors, board of advisors, if you don't have women's perspectives, you are completely missing the boat because fundamentally, men and women think about money differently. So another fun fact is of that 100 trillion, 40 trillion is going to go to baby boomer women. So because women tend to outlive their husbands. So when your husband dies, you pass wealth to your wife, right? Your surviving spouse. And then there's a second transfer of wealth that happens so for me, I'm going to inherit wealth twice. I'm going to inherit wealth once when my parents die, right? My dad will pass wealth to my mom, and then my mom will pass it down to my sister and I. So my sister and I will inherit wealth once there. And then again, when my husband passes, the estate is going to fully transfer to me. So I'm inheriting wealth twice. That didn't used to be the case before because before they would pass wealth down the patriarchal lines of
Mhm.
going from dad to sons. Even if there was a daughter, she wouldn't get control of the money. And that's not the case anymore. Like you have two daughters and a son, right? So
Sure.
when you are no more, hopefully very, very long, long, long time from now, as I tell my children, um, you will pass, I assume you're going to pass wealth down to all three of your children, not just to your son, right?
That's right.
But that's something that your grandparents might not have done or your great
Mhm.
grandparents might not have done because it would have been unusual because women were homemakers and they didn't belong in financial spaces. And I think when we look at leadership globally, right? Like women run countries, women run states, women run cities have far better outcomes than our male counterparts do. And so I think it's worth discussing why women aren't in leadership and what this change of wealth status is going to do for women to be able to be in those positions of leadership.
Yeah. So it is very interesting. And you're right. You think about, yeah, it probably wasn't, maybe this is the first like generational wealth transfer where there really is kind of equity among, women getting kind of an equal share, right, of what's being passed down. That is interesting. How do you think that, like, what are the implications of this? Like, what changes because now women are guiding $120 of assets?
Yeah, so it's actually not going to be very equitable because by 2030, two-thirds of American households are going to be controlled by women, not by men. So it's not a 50-50 split. This shift is like basically tilting everything in the opposite direction. So there's a lot of implications like socioeconomically for us, right? Like now we know that the birth rate just fell to 1.6, which is a problem for the country because we need children being born to sustain futures, right? We need fresh talent. We need a labor force. We need people who are going to pay into our social security systems. So the birth rate falling is significantly problematic for any country, right? Like we see Japan facing this problem. China is now facing this problem. India has growth. They still are growing populations, but they're facing another issue, which is there's not enough girls because in the 80s, they would abort female fetuses. And because everyone thought they wanted boys because it was like less of a burden. But now, 30, 40 years later, you all have boys and there's no girls for you to marry. So the lower socioeconomic classes of men are being left out. They're not able to get married. They're not able to have children, right? And so when we look to the US, what we think about and why this matters for us, right, as money managers, essentially, because we raise capital from investors, is considering how we look at investments and what is prioritized. So historically, like men, they look for the path that is going to make them the most amount of money and give them the most amount of power and control. Women don't think about money the same way. 85% of household giving is influenced by women. And so, what that means is when I'm raising capital and I'm speaking to women, I'm probably going to talk more about things like sustainability and legacy. And maybe I'm going to emphasize that this is going to benefit the local school districts, right? We were just talking about tax bills, right? So, can I share a little bit of what we talked about before?
You can, we're paying our fair share of taxes. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So you had a tax bill that went up, right? And it was part of it was the school district.
That's right.
So as a woman, right, I immediately went, oh, okay, great. Our children are going to be educated because that is really important to the future of what I want for my children's legacy to be, right? And then my second thought was as a multifamily investor, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to murder the T12 or hurt the T12 anytime there's a change, right? Our T12s are very sensitive to
Mhm.
the tax and insurance line, and that's true for all of us. So it's having that one thought first, followed by the second thought, whereas most men would not ever have that first thought. And if they did have it, it would definitely not be the first one. It would be maybe the second, third, fourth, or 10th thought, or it would be something that someone else maybe points out to them. So understanding that, right now, we can share this information with investors in a different way if we know predominantly we have women investors, because women generally don't mind paying into a system that will benefit society and benefit other people, whereas men tend to look more individualistic and look to their own bank account and how it's going to benefit or hurt them. And so understanding that nuance now gives you a better way to position your assets. Maybe now when you're going into an asset, you are partnering with the neighboring daycare to get working moms and dads some additional relief at a discounted cost. And that's a benefit to your residents, right? So that might be really important to women investors. I'm not saying all women, right? But that might be more important to women who are investing than, okay, I made an extra 1% of IRR on a 5-year hold. And so understanding the nuance of those differences, and I'm not saying that you have to or should do this every time, but it's definitely worth having that conversation if you want to have more success.
And yeah, I mean, that's really interesting on kind of as how you should pitch differently or think about business plans differently, right? And bring in more of a social aspect, and I think is interesting.
Yeah.
A way to think about that and relate better to women on how you're communicating the value in the investment, because they may see the values differently
Yeah.
than one may see the values, right? And how those values, they may not all be monetary, right?
Absolutely. Like there's intrinsic value to pouring money into an apartment complex in an area that needs to be brought up to date, right? Like there's a safety aspect, there's a social aspect, there's a financial aspect.
Yeah.
And I think, like, to your point, right? When you're talking to women about investments, even if you're talking about it from how it benefits them, because most investors want to know, okay, great, Ken, I'm going to give you 100 grand. How does it benefit me? A lot of times what I've noticed in conversations, and the N is small here, so take it with a grain of salt, but curious to see if maybe you're having these same conversations. But when I'm speaking to men who are making the investment decision, they're asking me things like, how much am I going to be able to save on my taxes by investing in multifamily? Um, what if I put my money in the S&P 500 instead? Or What if I bought Bitcoin instead of this investment, right? Like these are the questions that they're asking me about the functionality of the money and how the money is moving from A to them. Whereas when I speak to women, they're asking me far deeper and more thoughtful questions about is rent then going to be so unaffordable that people can't afford to live? I hear that question more often from women. I hear more about, well, I don't get paid for my labor outside of the house, right? So I am a stay-at-home mom or whatever, and maybe this could be a way for me to contribute to the household. So it's a means of a woman gaining more power, like more of the power dynamic, because money is power. And it's not saying that her spouse is a horrible person or anything like that. It's just the dynamic that's been true up until that moment in time. I also hear about, okay, wait, so if I do this, I can invest this now while my kids are young. And by the time they're ready to go to college, I now have a college fund built for them. Right. So I hear that variation. So there's a lot of thought about legacy planning and planning for not just my family, but families around me and people around me. It's really important for women generally to speak about that, or at least more important than it is for men.
Yeah. Now that you've made me think about it, I agree with you. I think especially the idea of legacy and
Yeah.
legacy planning and yeah, what does this mean? How does this set us up? How does this set up the next generation and kind of the longer term aspect of it? I definitely can resonate with in conversations that we have. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest, on differences in men and women too much, which is probably a miss on my part, on my sales pitch and how I'm communicating. So
Well, now you can do better because you know better.
exactly right. But it is really insightful. I'm curious to kind of flip it around, right? Because we're talking about, okay, how do we better communicate with women, or just the differences of communicating if we're communicating our investments and things. I'm curious on the other side, and coming from the perspective of, like you said, I have two daughters, right?
Yeah.
They're only 9 and 8, but my hope for them is that they are, one thing that I want to leave behind to them, which I didn't get in my childhood, was this idea of like financial literacy and understanding investments and understanding money and how it works. And so, I want them to be really smart with their own money, right? And to have their own money and be able to be their own investors and own entrepreneurs or whatever they want to do. So, like, speaking to them or speaking to women out there, how can women evaluate the other side of this equation, right? When they're looking at investments, right? What are the ways that women can evaluate these deals? I'm curious, is there anything that you see in the way that women look at these deals, differently than men, I guess? You shared some of the questions you asked, but kind of just around like how you would view a business plan, maybe, and kind of the parts that you dig into that are different from your perspective. So kind of, I guess, a couple layers there on my question, but yeah,
Okay.
how do you
So
help them
let's
out?
like peel back the onion one layer at a time, right? So
Yeah.
first and foremost, the reason that you've missed this is because we live in a patriarchal society, and there's not really a reason for you to think about it unless you're being intentional about it or someone brings it up to you. So you're not like just this jerk walking around, like not thinking, it hasn't affected you materially yet. And it will, because women are going to change the way that we invest and the way we talk about investment. So it will come. It just hasn't yet. But in a patriarchal society, and I talk about this on stage a lot, it's built in a hierarchy, right? So it's one man at the top, and then everybody kind of like trickles down to a wide base, right? But there's that pinnacle at the top. And the point of capitalism within a patriarchal structure is to try to, climb that till you're the man at the top and looking down on everybody else, right? Because you have all the money, all the power, whatever. Matriarchies, a lot of people immediately assume that a matriarchy is like the inverse, right? Where it's like one woman at the top and then everybody comes below them. But that's not how matriarchies are built. Matriarchies are built more like a circle where women and men, right? It's not exclusive to women. It's like women and men hold hands in a circle and protect everybody that's inside the circle, right? Your kids, your employees, your neighbors, your community, your family. Everybody goes in the center, and we all kind of like stand around the circle and we protect the inside of the circle together. And as our children grow up and grow into their own investor career or whatever career they want to take on, we open the circle, we make the circle bigger, and now they help us protect the future generations. And so that's how I see the difference between a patriarchy and a matriarchy.
Mhm.
So when you're structured like that, and we're talking about money, right? There's no concentration of wealth all at the top. There is a concentration of wealth that happens at the perimeter, but anybody can come into the perimeter and anybody can leave the perimeter too. It's your choice and your decision of how you want to fit into that structure and that society, right? So that's like first and foremost. You had no reason to talk about it until, I put it right in front of your face. So that's number one. Number two is rethinking what we just think generally about organizational structures, whether it be government, society, companies. We can think of it differently. We're allowed to. It doesn't have to always be the way it's been done. And then the next step, right, is educating women because I'm in rooms with all men, right? Our industry is heavily male dominated. So it's oftentimes I'm the only woman at the table or the only woman in the room. And men talk about making money. They make introductions to each other. They talk about what the latest investment they have is. They talk about new strategies that they're using and they share really freely in those rooms and they're talking about investments. Women, on the other hand, when I'm in rooms of women, now we're starting to have this conversation, but it hasn't always been like this. And we're having this conversation because usually someone like me is forcing this conversation. Otherwise, the conversation is just around kin keeping and emotional intelligence and, unloading the burden of being a working mom or wife or even being like a stay-at-home parent is a really tough job mentally. And so we're talking about the ethos of our lives and we're kin keeping, but we don't talk about investments as much because for a long time it was taboo to talk about money. It was gauche to talk about your income and your investments. And everybody wanted to keep it kind of secretive or close to the chest, but that hurts women because if we're not talking about the salaries that we're getting, if we're not talking about how we're negotiating jobs and positions or how we're navigating investment spaces, or if we're not talking about the things that we're investing in, the things we look at when we invest, then no one else gets the benefit of learning from it while men continue to advance because they are sharing these things with each other. They are making sure that other men are getting opportunities and women have to do the same and men have to do the same for women, right? Like I've had a lot of doors open for me by my male partners and colleagues. And so by them just doing that one thing of opening that door for me, I'm now going and opening this door for other women to come into the space so we can have more women in leadership. So I say all of this to say that as your daughters are growing up, passing on financial literacy is the most important legacy I can leave behind for my children. It's not the money. I want to teach them how to make the money, not give them the money, right?
Yeah.
So my girls are just turned 6 and we talk about money all the time. All the time. We talk about loans. My kids can explain what interest is. They can tell you what multifamily is. We're having age appropriate conversations, but since they were babies, I have talked to them about money and I don't shy away from it. I never tell them that they can't have something. I tell them, well, how are you going to get the money to get that? I want them thinking like an entrepreneur. I want them thinking like an investor. I want them thinking about how to make their money work for them. And what's really important for me, especially raising daughters, is that they are never in a relationship where they are financially dependent on anybody else because that is the biggest power struggle in a relationship. And I've seen women, and you've seen women that should leave a situation but cannot because they don't have the money to leave that situation. And it could be abuse, right? It could be emotional abuse, financial abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault. It could be so many different things. And women, especially once they have children, they get stuck in a situation because they can't afford rent. Maybe they haven't been working outside of the house for the last 10 years because they've been raising kids. And now all of a sudden there's a mistress. And what do I do? Right. And so women with money means a woman that has power. And she has the power to make decisions and choices to leave situations that don't serve her, whether it's her workplace, her home environment, her friend circle, her family. It doesn't matter because she has the power to make the choices that serve her better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really powerful and really insightful. And I think as we kind of round this out, we talked about women are coming into a lot of wealth in the next 20 years. and and how important it is that they understand what to do with that, right? And how to make the right decisions with that wealth, right? Whether they're young and they're starting out, or they're older and they're coming into money. So let's leave the audience with this. I mean, what are some practical tips that you have on how women can start to prepare for this transfer of wealth?
One, get ready, ladies. This is our time and it's our moment to be able to redefine how we think about capitalism and how we think about organizational structures. So that's number one. Number two, for me, and this is just for me, I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but whenever I'm being asked for an investment of capital into anything, a business, a multifamily, any other kind of real estate, any kind of situation where I am using my dollars, women should really reconsider that dollars are just power, right? They're economic power, and you can vote with your dollars for things you support and things you don't support. So for me, it's really important that I leave a legacy behind that I'm proud of, that my daughters can ask me why I made an investment or why I didn't make an investment when they were little or when they were older, whenever, and I can comfortably explain to them why. So one of the first questions I ask, if you're asking me for money, my very first question is, show me your decision makers. I want to see diversity in decision making because it's a strength. It's not a weakness. And if you have 25 employees and all of the people that are in the decision making level and above are all old white men, well, you are not going to convince me that you are working with the best of the best. You're telling me you settled for what was available in front of you. You didn't go to find the best, and I want to work with the best. So either you're telling me you don't work with the best, or you don't think 51% of the population is the best in any capacity. And I just cannot get on board with either of those. So I don't make investments into companies that I can't tell my daughters, like, hey, I did it for you, not for the money. So that's really important to me, right? The third thing I would say to women is start getting educated. These are topics that should feel overwhelming and scary and foreign. If you don't know what IRR is, if you don't know what cash on cash is, if you don't know what an equity multiple is, that's okay. These are not things that we are taught in school. This is something that every single one of us had to learn somewhere along the line. So get yourself educated. There is ChatGPT now. There's AI videos that come out all the time explaining all of these concepts. There's YouTube where you can go and learn about this for free. I put out a bajillion pieces of content educating. You put out a bajillion pieces of content educating. We both put out newsletters. This information is free. It is uncomfortable, but it is free. So start leaning into the discomfort of learning about finances and learning about money, because it is a learning curve, but once you do it, then you can start controlling your own financial future. And think of money and the importance of you having money, not as something to break apart a family, right? Like, I am very happily married. We just celebrated our 13th anniversary. My husband's great. He makes money. I make money. We share all of our finances. Like I like to tell him, his money is my money and my money is my money.
I feel that.
But look, I think we both ascribe to the philosophy that happy wife, happy life, right? Like, everyone's happy when I'm
There's nothing truer.
It's true. And that's what all the good men say. The green flag men are like, yep, that's true. Write it down, save it.
Yeah.
But it's not, I don't want my own money because I want to leave my husband. I love my husband. I love our life. We have a great life. I want to have my own money so that I can show my daughters that I'm here because I love your dad, because he treats me so well. I want to stay. I want to give him my energy. But if he wasn't going to treat me well, I can leave this situation. I don't need to stay somewhere that's not serving me. So it's like destigmatizing the conversation around it. So for the women listening, the next time you are with other women, whether it's your family or your friends, your coworkers, it doesn't matter. I challenge you to bring up finance and bring up the topic of investing. Ask them what they're investing into. Ask them what they're putting money into. Ask them how they're making their money. Ask them if they've lost money recently and what happened and what did they learn. If you don't understand a terminology that someone uses, especially if it's on like my reels, ask me. I will happily explain it to you or make a video. It's like my favorite thing to be able to introduce somebody to this world for the very first time. It's so fun to talk about for me. So just remember, it'll be uncomfortable, but lean into it, because that's how we get out of that discomfort too. And we get more knowledge and we get more confidence so that we can start investing, because women make better investment decisions than men do. This has been shown over and over and over again. Women do more with less money. They are better investors in terms of returns than our male counterparts. So, build that confidence from within so that you can actually go and put it into practice.
Well, I love the message of being proactive, right?
Yeah,
I, not relying on anybody else, relying on yourself, leaning into what's uncomfortable, because I do think, and I've felt that even in my own
totally.
personal relationships, whether it's friends or others, that it's just, not something they're familiar with, not something they want to dig into. And honestly, frankly, super busy with everything else, because women often juggle a job and they're in charge of the whole family. And,
Yeah.
As much as us good guys try to chip in, it's just, we're not moms. We can't do it all like
You're not
that.
there
So
yet.
I
Not
love,
there yet.
yeah, I love the idea of leaning into it, leaning into the discomfort, understand there's a ton of free information out there,
Tons.
but you have to start taking ownership of your financial future. And it's just as true for so many men out there as it is for women. But I love that we had this conversation today about women and the transfer. And it's going to be really interesting to see over the next 20 years, I guess, how that, impacts our industry, but probably changes the world in some way. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, I appreciate the combo
Yeah.
today, Veena. This was awesome. Such good information. And I agree, probably not a conversation that's being had a lot. So
No.
appreciate the insights. And
Ew.
if folks want to find out more about Vive Funds, they want to, find out more about you or follow you, where can they find you?
So I'm on all the social media as Veena Jetti, VeenaJetti, but I'm the most active on my Instagram. So I will actually respond to you on Instagram. I probably won't anywhere else. And you can go to our website if you're interested in learning about investments, vivefunds.com.
Awesome. Well, Veena, I hope you have a great rest of the day. And for all you listeners, if you found value in the episode, make sure you subscribe and we'll be back next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.